Hi, my name's Peter. I'm an undergrad at UCD studying applied and computational math, and I'm going to talk to you about my project on the mathematical modeling of optimal road cycling strategies, which was supervised by Dr. James Herdrich. The goal of this project was to study and compare the modern-day strategies and theory behind long-distance cycling. We wanted to convert a GPX file into the Frenet-Serret frame, in which we would solve for the dynamics of the athlete moving along some of these routes given a certain pedaling strategy. We could then compare these strategies under a few metrics and see which we decided was optimal. We're going to work in the Frenet-Serret frame, which is made up of three orthonormal vectors which are seen to move with the curve, as well as two functions which describe the curvature and torsion at that point. The reason we do this is because most of the dynamics exist in the gradient direction t, as well as the acceleration being easy to break up into its different components in this frame. We identified four main forces: pedaling, friction, drag, and gravity. The first three of these will solely exist in the t direction, and gravity can easily be broken up into its components. We're going to solve Newton's second law, which is that the net force is equal to the mass times the acceleration in the t direction to obtain the speed. As we can see that the acceleration in the t direction is purely the rate of change of speed. We can also look at the normal or centripetal force experienced by the athlete, which is the curvature multiplied by the speed squared. We're going to keep this below a certain threshold so that the athlete can only take so much force when going around a turn. The forces we're working with are already well modeled. Drag has a square proportion on the speed at which we're going at, while friction and gravity will depend on where we are, as that will decide the gradient at which we're going. We worked with a few different pedaling strategies in this early stage of the project, such as constant or linear change. One track we modeled was the Alpe d'Huez. It's a climb in the Tour de France, and luckily enough, I didn't need to cycle along it, I just needed to model it. I've included a 3D rendering of the track in MATLAB along with a graph of the curvature and torsion as you move along it. We modeled it for two different strategies, a constant pedaling and then a linear change with a maximum speed. And while the constant pedaling took a while to get going, they roughly behave the same. The linear change takes a bit longer to react to fluctuations on the track, so fluctuations in the speed, but they get about the same distance in the same amount of time. Now, while this is all well and good, we can only compare different strategies as quickly as we come up with them. So we looked for a different way to do this. We settled on Dynopt, the dynamical optimization toolbox in MATLAB. And what it does is you input a right-hand side of the ODE with a control parameter that it's allowed to change, which here is the pedaling, some constraints like the centripetal force I talked about earlier, along with an objective function to be minimized, which here will usually use the time or the work done, or some combination of the two. And over a few thousand iterations, it will output an optimal control parameter, along with graphs of speed, position, and work done. And so here, we took our route to be the first half of a sine curve, so just a hill, and starting from rest, we wanted to minimize the work done to get over this hill. And over about 1,300 iterations, it settled on pedaling as quickly as you can until you just about reach a speed at which you can coast over the top, nearly stopping on top and then rolling down the other side. And this makes sense, but the interesting part is that it decides to do this as opposed to perhaps pedaling at a slower speed for longer so that you're experiencing less drag. It decides that you just want to get over as quickly as you can. So that ends at where we are in the project right now. What I want to do next is I want to look a bit more at the conversion of energy to force in the pedaling. So is it just a straight linear proportionality, or is there some dependence on the speed? As well as looking at some more complicated routes and looking at better ways of displaying the data. Thank you all for listening.